Stories come from all over the world, and this one comes from South America in Argentina. For deep in the Andes Mountains, there was the cold-eyed witch. And during the warm times, people were safe. It was during the cold, during the winter when she came out, and she was hungry. And she wasn't hungry for just anything. She was hungry for children. Somehow she had cast a spell on a ball, and as she rolled it out, it would shine with so many colors. She would disappear and hope that some children would come upon it. And on one particular day, there was a brother and sister, Luis and Natalia, and they saw this shining ball, how it changed with so many colors, crimson and azure and teal, all of these colors. And Natalia saw that ball and was drawn to it. And she reached her hand to that ball. But as soon as she did that, the ball rolled on its own. Natalia saw this as a great game and chased after it. And soon Luis was chasing after Natalia. But every time they chased and caught up to that ball and reached out for it, that ball would roll, dazzle them with so many colors, and those two children went deeper and deeper into the Andes Mountains, until finally a snowflake fell on Natalia's nose, and she looked up. And she saw that she was surrounded by all these rough rocks, that they had wandered for so long that they had become lost. But she was still enchanted by that magic ball. Finally, that magic ball rested by a huge, tall, dark rock. And she reached for that ball, and this time she held it in her hands. But just like that, it popped like a bubble. And Natalia grieved. Now Natalia and Luis did not know how they would return home, and they did not even have that magic ball. The snow drove down around them. The wind swirled about until finally Luis turned to Natalia and says, "You must get some protection. If you are on the north side of this rock, you'll be protected from the wind, and you can rest, and I will look about to make sure that we are safe." So Natalia rested herself against that dark rock, and her long hair cascaded down and fell upon that rock. And it wasn't long after she coiled up that she fell asleep. A little distance away, Luis watched. But he became tired, especially running after that magic ball all day. He took his fingers and he tried to keep his eyes open, but soon sleep took over. And Luis, who had hoped to guard, fell asleep. While the two children slept, it was Natalia who had an amazing dream. She dreamed that she was back home, that her mother was singing to her and brushing her hair. And it felt so nice. But then her mother became rough, and it felt as if her mother was pulled on her hair so much that Natalia yelled out. And when she yelled out, she awoke, and she found that her hair was stuck to that big black rock. She pulled and she pulled, but she could not. And she realized it was not her mother in her dream that had brushed her hair. She knew the stories of the cold-eyed witch. She knew it was that witch that had brushed her hair and had cast and cursed her, and so that she would be there until the witch came back to eat her. She reached out with her hand, but there was some invisible wall. She saw across that there was her brother. She called out to Luis, "Luis, Luis, I am stuck here. I am cursed." Luis woke up with a start. He ran over, but he ran into that invisible wall. He tried to climb up to see if maybe he could go up and over, but nothing he did helped. And at that moment, a great white owl swooped once, twice, 3 times. And then the owl said, "Things of the dark and things unnamed, save us from light and fire's flame." Well, when those 2 children heard those words, they did not know what it meant. But they sat there and they thought about those words until Natalia looked at Luis and said, "I know what it means. It means that things of this valley fear fire. We must have fire to break this curse. But I am stuck here. Luis, it must be you." Now, Luis did not want to leave his sister, but he felt like he had no choice. There was nothing around him that could cause a spark or some kind of flame. It was snow. Everything was wet. And then he looked up in the sky, and there was a great condor whose wingspan was even longer than Luis himself. And that condor swooped once, twice, 3 times, and then headed in one direction as if calling forth to Luis. Luis took it as a sign, and he followed that condor, running as best he could, trying not to trip to keep up with that condor, until finally that condor made it deep into the woods where there was a cottage made out of earth and stones. It was tumbling down just a little bit, but that condor swooped once, twice, 3 times, and then the condor flew off. Luis knew that his answer was in this cottage. He looked around to see who lived there, but he saw no one. He pushed open the door, and still it was dark in there, except for in the fireplace there were some embers. There wasn't enough fire yet, but he knew in order to take those embers, he must first do something kind, for such was the way in the land of Argentina. And so he looked and saw that there was an axe. He went deep into the woods. He chopped down some saplings. He brought them back. He loaded up that firewood on the side of that cottage. He took some of them inside and he blew on those embers. And as those embers grew and the flames danced, Luis saw that he wasn't alone. For in the corner of that cottage was an old man. "I wondered when you would see me. You were kind to go and have more firewood for myself. But I see with the wildness in your eyes, something is wrong. So what is it? How can I help you?" "Oh, it is my sister. My sister, she has been cursed by the cold-eyed witch, and she has stuck upon this big black rock. And the only thing that I need is some fire. It will break the curse." "Ah, then please, please, take a stick, but hold on to it tight." So Luis took a flaming stick and he ran back to his sister. It was a long ways to run, but run he did. There was a lake in his way, and he wished that he could just run around it, but he felt it would be faster to go right through it. And so he did, raising up that torch high. But as he did so, he splashed through, and that water put out that fire. Luis returned back to that old man's cottage. "Please, the flame has gone out. I need a second stick. May I have a second stick?" "Ah, yes, you must. And it is getting nightfall. You must get there fast, or she will die." So Luis took a second stick. And this time when he ran and came upon that lake, he knew not to cut through it, that he would just have to run and pick up his speed around that lake. And he held on to it tight. And then he came upon the canyons. He stumbled through, and as he stumbled through, he did not hold on to that stick hard enough, and it fell into the snow, and the flame went out. Luis hung his head, but he knew the only thing he could do was to go back to the old man. So he ran back. "Ah, yes, this time I'm sure you are wise, and you will be as fast as possible and hold on as if your knuckles will fall off." So Luis took that third flaming stick. And when he ran faster than the wind himself. He saw that lake, but he did not run through it. He ran around it. He held on as if his knuckles were to fall off, and so white they turned as he held on, stumbling through, but it did not fall. Now, all this running caught the attention of a flamingo. And the flamingo ran beside Luis and stretched out its wing. And Luis took that as a sign to grab the wing. So he grabbed onto the wing with one hand, held onto that flaming stick, and the two of them flew until that flame, that heat, caused some of the feathers to burn from that flamingo, but still the flamingo flew. Down below, Luis saw that big black rock, and there was his sister. He nudged the flamingo to land. The flamingo landed, and Luis took his flaming stick. There was some moss near the rock, and he set it aflame. And as soon as those flames danced about that black rock, the black rock burst into 1,000 pieces. The invisible wall was no longer there. The curse was broken. The power of the cold-eyed witch was gone from the Andes Mountains forever. Natalia stood up. She wanted to hug her brother, but first she ran to the flamingo, whose feathers were still burning from the flames. Natalia reached out with her cool hands and stroked the breast of that flamingo, and the flames went out. But to this day, flamingos still have a crimson breast in honor of the bravery of that one flamingo. Then Natalia turned to her brother Luis, and they embraced. And the two of them lived for many years. They had their own families. They had their own children. And as for the cold-eyed witch, no one saw her again. And as for the magic ball, the only thing left of it was the memory that I shared with you today.